What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Apartment 113 podcast, where we talk with cool folks in the cannabis and psychedelics industry to learn about their projects and celebrate their successes. My name is Rob Sanchez, and this is episode 14. We're joined today by Grant Saxena, who is a writer for Fat Nugs Magazine and the founder of the Aether Arcade. The Aether Arcade is a metaphysics blog and research laboratory. Find out more on AETHER, Aether Arcade, ARCADE.com, and find Fat Nugs at fatnugsmag.com. Enjoy the show. Grant, welcome to the show, man. Thank you for jumping on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rob. Really excited to be here.
I'm glad we could talk. I think I've definitely fallen down a rabbit hole or two on your blogs there for Aether Arcade. There's a lot to take in there. Could you give us and our listeners a little bit of background on how you got to Icarus e-learning and Aether Arcade?
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I appreciate the reads and everything out there. It was just kind of a couple years ago, I fell back into the rhythm of trying to finish up my degrees and stuff like that. So I went back to school, finishing up a PhD. I picked up a first law degree from the United Kingdom along the way. And I just started kind of writing on this blog as sort of an outlet from the more like rigid and structured academic stuff that I was doing for the coursework. And it's a little bit easier to put out some of the theories and stuff like that more quickly in a more digestible format and things like that. And I kind of described my journey along the way of going into this different legal system as an American student. I took like 15 years off between my undergrad and then going back for my my postgraduate stuff. So it was just kind of this fun outlet that I was able to share some philosophy, some technology, some creativity topics along the way. And I was luckily got picked up just through this brand new online platform called Icarus, which is more the professorship that you mentioned for a course on Lean Six Sigma with artificial intelligence. And I think they're still recruiting and looking for teachers and things like that. So it's a brand new online course that can take any of the classes and then translate them into pretty much any language that exists. So it's got a powerful algorithm to kind of, get out the different manuscripts and things like that, but just a wide variety of PhDs and people from you name it. They've probably been at the different universities. So just a couple projects. I've got a laboratory that I work at now called Aether Arcade, which is kind of the where the blog is centered around, but I do just different holistic experiments and things like that, which kind of lead into more of maybe the cannabis discussion. But
I see. So was it the experimentation around metaphysics and things like that kind of guided you towards cannabis, or was cannabis always in the picture as you were finishing school or working on some of the other businesses that you've been a part of in that hiatus between school?
That's a good question. How do the two blend in there? I think metaphysics is a kind of an interesting topic to try and define because it's sort of kind of asks the underlying question of like why things exist, what's the basis of existence. It's a very kind of deep and sort of heavy topic to jump into sometimes. So it does help to like meditate sometimes after, toking a little bit. I found I try and meditate and things like that a little bit on maybe the assistance of a little bit of ganja. But as far as for like school and things like that, it's sort of I don't know. It's been just kind of an interesting intersection of the play between some of my topics that go into Aether Arcade have to do with veterans that are disabled. So my background, my undergraduate, I did in West Point. So I graduated there right around when 9/11 happened. I served overseas as a lieutenant. I came back over and basically got out of the military as a captain. And so some of the metaphysical stuff that I try and look at, like for holistic therapies, are kind of self experimented things. Everything from like listening to music that might help your mood get a little bit better. Things that I've tried to do through my journey, kind of congruently with like Veterans Affairs. But then I think there's also room in there to experiment with, plant-based holistic substances. Could be cannabis, could be psychedelics. You want to be careful with that stuff, under the guidance of maybe, somebody that's a little bit more versed in that. There's like retreats and stuff you could do before somebody just does it at home. Word to the
Yeah, it's not
caution.
necessarily a self-treatment
Yeah,
kind of
something
thing.
to be cautious of. But I think like on the spectrum of anything like that, that was sort of birthed out of my own journey through like the regular healthcare system, and then trying to figure out other things that worked for me along the way, which
Right.
cannabis does as a consumer. I've been doing that since I got out of the military and stuff like that. And then yeah, honestly, through school and stuff like that, I was trying to balance things. Maybe don't partake during class. I don't think you could do that. Or if it's online or whatever, there's rules to all this stuff. But, trying to at least like decompress a little bit, like during the law school stuff too. Anytime you're in school, it can be pretty stressful. But then like when you're going through the law school stuff, a lot of the examples and the case studies that you have to read about can be pretty gruesome. So there's some of this stuff helps you to decompress a little bit, or you know, uh, helps with dreams and stuff like that too. I was
Kind of
speaking
clear
with
the
somebody
slate a little
recently.
bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, before we get too far, thank you for the service to the country and your bravery, man. I definitely appreciate that. That's a not an easy task. So that's it,
That means
and
a
it's
lot. Yeah.
also not a simple thing to always re-enter society or to come back from that experience. So I think spending time with kind of veteran therapy and trying to help others in that approach is a virtuous act for sure. And there's a lot I think some of these substances could do for those folks, where we talk a lot about recreational use and a lot of the societies having fun with these things. They have a very serious and real impact potentially on folks with PTSD or kind of heavy anxiety and things like that. That's a really, I think, driving part of the industry, but can sometimes be forgotten for like all the branding and the packaging that gets put around everything, kind of with our capitalist mindset over here.
That means a lot, Rob. Yeah, that you've got the just great insight there, and personally too, just to hear that. I think a lot of the patients out there, the veterans, like you say, and just beyond that, a lot of people that have been through traumatic things could be of a lot more healing benefit from legalization and things like that, like we were talking about. We chatted before. There was a gentleman, uh, Dr. Hudson, and he's a PhD from a company called Backbone IQ. They do like software management and stuff like that for companies in the cannabis space. But they were just awarded one of the 7 DEA licenses to conduct like tests on veterans with them, like giving them the cannabis and stuff like that to try and bring maybe some more relief to this demographic and things like that. So, but I really do appreciate that. I try and mesh a few of the different things that I'm doing as a semi-retired younger person to try and give back a little bit of my own venture into this stuff, and then how it could help the next generations coming down the line.
Right, right. The body of knowledge that is cannabis right now, or the societal approach, is like a cathedral. Right, it's taken like generations already to build it, and we still haven't really seen it for perhaps what it will become. It's fast moving, but still it's going slow. If you look at its ability to go global, or with other countries kind of starting to turn the light on for cannabis, it's fast, but in the grand scheme of things, it's taken a while from our perspectives.
You're totally right. With the speed of bureaucracy now, even with some legalization, we've seen kind of the domino effect. A lot of different states are now giving way, like Missouri, New York, some other places that have done things in the United States. But then overseas, you've got a lot of the international arena. I just got back from covering Spannibis, and people are talking
Yes.
about Germany, the juggernaut out there that's like four different events of a business convention, and then like a championship growers cup and a scientific symposium they've got going. And so there's a lot of
Germany's moving very quickly. I like their approach, man. They dove in fast, and they are getting some checks and balances, it seems, from the EU or the UN, and getting some guiding lights there. But they're really going in. I think after looking at the U.S. and Canada the last few years, there's a lot that can be said economically, why it could be valuable, and I think they're drinking the Kool-Aid, they're smoking the grass.
oh yeah, they're
So that's great.
definitely trying to be the progressive kind of spearheading the movements over there. I mean, there have been some other shifts in trying to do some like social experiments from France, and I want to
Yes,
say
yeah,
Switzerland now has maybe
right.
medical.
Switzerland has experiments ongoing. They've had some medical, and now folks will be some select few will be added to this social experiment to kind of measure the impact of legalization there.
Hmm.
I think that's a pretty good idea. It'd be like if, instead of changing to Nevada recreational, they just tried it in Vegas. I get, which is probably not a good example because there's not much outside of Vegas. But imagine in California, they just tried it in San Diego first, and then kind of measured the value. I think it's a good way to appease anyone that maybe doesn't quite agree, and try to show them the value a little slower, as not everyone's like kind of worldview or backgrounds are ready to just greenlight cannabis on a big scale.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. You've got kind of just a different old world mentality versus the contemporary proponents of change, and then as you move into some of the more interesting political arenas, it was at the UN level that they were trying to come back on the United States for having recreationally legalized in some states because it was against
Yes,
a
right.
60s convention arbitration that we signed into, right? I'm sure you know about this
Yeah,
one.
I'm not quite certain what the intent was behind that one. We mentioned it on a few episodes here. I need to do some digging in there to learn like what else was passed during that. But it was called the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs in 1961, and basically everyone that signed it agreed not to schedule cannabis and other things below a Schedule 2. In different countries don't necessarily have a schedule. I forgot what Germany has, but they have a version of that kind of
Mhm.
tiering substances. And yeah, that's an interesting one because they're kind of contractually bound to a 65-year-old agreement. It could probably be argued that it's time for a revision, or if the right countries got together, that it could be amended or slightly changed to
Very
remove
much
cannabis
so.
from that list.
It could be, yeah, maybe put on the docket and things like that. And, as you're going through all the different like layers, when I was at the Emerald Conference at the beginning of March last month and seeing all the different posters and things like that, different experiments. One was from a doctor that was looking at benefits for like mental illness and things like that for dementia and things. But again, trying to get access to these DEA licenses and then having to get a population of people that can commit to these experiments and, to get some consistent results
And
until
report
there's a
anything
decent,
truthfully.
yeah, it's really hard to maybe hang your hat on those results, so to speak. And then if you're like you're talking about having a deschedule scheduling down, maybe that's the next realistically, that's probably what would happen before a full up federal legalization. Although going back to some of the populations, it's unfortunate, I think, because some of the populations could benefit, if there was a more easier access to some of these, like if veterans could get access through healthcare at Veterans Affairs or something, and they'd pay for it, or they could be part of studies, and they didn't feel so ostracized by the stigma that sometimes is associated with consumption, which shouldn't be there. If you go to these events, I mean, you've got a room full of, like at the Emerald Conference, a room full of most brilliant minds you could think of, and it's like half of them are probably stoned there. I don't know, maybe give it the speeches, but
They've all done the intellectual legwork and whatever their area of science is enough to present even. I mean, it says something about a stigma or about, the older like push, that the reefer madness, right? And things like that. Like, it's not too mad if it's a bunch of PhD scientists that have been studying like, plant chemical chemical reactions and other things in biology. It starts to really get into the weeds, literally.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's kind of like the pendulum that swings a little bit between rational and irrational. And when you've got these blanket political, campaigns that have really maybe set up some populations, for detriment to their benefits of healthcare, then you've got the scientists that are now coming back with the logic and the research that shows that. And sometimes they just need a little bit better voice of like massaging the findings, because it was almost like if you had a primer in chemistry 101, that would have been a good preface before going in there, because some of the talks were like really engaging and really technical.
They didn't stay surface level, huh?
Yeah,
Dove
they were
in.
getting like, I mean, they were showing the chemical compounds and the structures of different things, and like analysis was a big kind of elephant in the room for a lot of the discussions and the poster topics, just because even if, you're a consumer, like, myself, for example, as a disabled veteran, when I go to places, I try and check out different dispensaries, and sometimes I'll go for brands that I'm a little bit more familiar with and things like that. But like recently, I went into a pretty nice posh dispensary in San Diego and bought like a Rove product that said 93% THC, which was, I don't think that was correct, and
Yeah,
so
that'd have to be extremely concentrated.
and then you have to ask yourself, if it was true, like you don't want that before you're going to go into like a social situation of covering, to talk to people or interviewing for the science thing. So it gets into the big discussion was the analysis and the reporting of different terpene profiles, and then how does that affect the medical population that needs kind of a like a prescription level consistency.
Yeah, there's definitely a bridge there that hasn't been built yet between like connecting some of the nuances in the different cannabinoids, like the terpenes and esters and so on, to actual therapeutic use, where our medical approach, and thankfully so, right? We don't want to prescribe things that we don't fully understand or that we're not confident in their effects. And cannabis just makes that extremely difficult by itself, having so many of those compounds rolled into one flower or one product if they're distilled or tinctured. Easier said than done. I mean,
For
we're
sure.
thankful for the scientists and for these labs and universities to start to dig into that. I think that if I were like a little bit younger, I would have gone deep into that side of biology. I was always very interested in the cure and what can be done afterwards to kind of maximize the cannabinoids that you have in the flower, and how that profile changes over time, I think is pretty significant. And perhaps something even that could be talked about there, as often the labeling shows what this product tested at before it was packaged. But then it aged 2 more weeks. It was packaged, it was shipped or sold, and then aging again. And by the time you actually get to it, how much of that label is still reality? It's hard to know.
Totally agreed on that. It's another big topic of just kind of the labeling and like the players right now in the market that are trying to sell for profit. The underlying kind of elephant in the room is that we've got a medical industry and then we've got a business industry, and it's like a supply and demand. And then as different, you know, distributors or producers start to try and give into maybe the demand that says that like an inflated THC ratio is going to sell more, or somehow there's a fad that gets brought in for a minute, then I think that can sort of wear into the authenticity of what you're really trying to do with at least the medical population and things like that. So there was a lot of
Right.
debate on that. There was another scientist, Dr. Anna Schwab, and she spent like 4 years on this. It's a really great study. I can send a link to. It's talks about the over percentages on labels and things like that, and how that kind of has a
Yeah, and I think there's even some like lawsuits shaking out right now in Michigan there was one, and I think there might be something else going on I want to say it was like Arkansas or somewhere else in the South, where basically the lab testing is not reflecting reality. And it's probably good to crack down because either the labs aren't being consistent, or I've also heard that some cultivars, and this is not what everyone does, and it's not recommended, but they would actually sprinkle some keef or like THC right on top of their flower sample, so that the lab, when they go to burn that in the gas chromatographer, they can actually get a higher reading, and it's not the true sample. Yeah.
There's a lot of nefarious actions afoot, and things that you mentioned, they happen. A lot of other things, all the way up into including, and I heard this directly from industry players that were exhibitors, at the Emerald Conference. They would say that people that worked for like the control board, some of them were just turning a blind eye. Some of them didn't want to even deal with shutting down some of the people. Some of them were taking bribes. Some of them were incompetent,
Still the Wild West in a few of these
yeah, like
locales.
a total myriad of just different things that I was like, as an end level consumer, I mean, coming from the background that I did, it was very much like rank and order, get in file, here, take this, that's what they give you. So when you walk in, and I've always had a medical license, I've had one now in a bunch of different states for probably like 13 years, including Nevada, back when you could have the license, but there were no dispensaries because they kept getting shut down by DEA and stuff like that. So, but I've always tried to be on that sort of like level of, just get the license and be on the up and up with it and things like that. And I think that's what pushes sometimes people into the black market. Like my Uber
Yeah.
driver was telling me about these things called seshes. Have you heard about those out in California?
No, I don't think so.
So they're kind of like just think of like a farmer's market for weed.
Yeah, I've heard of some markets like that in Northern Cali for some of the legacy growers.
Yeah.
That
And
sounds great, man. That'd be cool. You could walk around and check out the produce, get some
yeah,
fresh.
totally, like different levels of every level that you could think of, like tomatoes versus cannabis, synonym that is talked about a lot.
Yeah, that's the
And
tomato model in action right there. Beautiful.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You could go in and everything, kind of almost like at a dispensary where you have all the different tiers of it, but it's being brought straight from the farmers, and there isn't a lot of the middleman sort of influence that can be sometimes commodifying, to say the least. Sometimes it's got a positive. Sometimes, like there's a dispensary. I'll have to invite you to sample some of these from the source out here. They do pretty good deals for veterans and stuff, and then they always let you round up to give like to a charity. And sometimes that's like an animal
Right.
shelter, or they give it to the VFW and things like that. And then there's other places that really want to, around town and stuff like that in Vegas, that really want to be more the almost entertainment when you're buying marijuana, and they almost want to bring a different sort of taxation to the scheme. in the
Yeah,
model.
again, commodifying, because if it's entertainment, you got to make money on that in Las Vegas.
Right, right. I mean, that's like using,
It's
like you said, like Vegas isn't maybe the best model of everyone to like to use elsewhere, but it
it's
shows
not a
kind of,
great model city conversationally,
yeah,
but
but
it
it's
is.
got some good, like, to see what's going on there. Interestingly enough, like the prices, and
Yeah,
it's dropping, like the price per ounce or whatever, it's kind of dropping across the board nationally, and you can see that
right.
in like Vegas big time around.
And that's definitely a contrast too from that, the dispensary with veteran deals, offering like roundup abilities to give back to charities and, trying to make an impact in the society that they're building their business versus the entertainment style, like come here and spend money, welcome to Vegas kind of vibe. Dispensaries can operate well in that whole spectrum, but I think something closer to the former is probably the goal in most locales and cities. But it's easy for me to say that and forget that I too was 21 years old and and would have traveled to these cities and went ham, man, and bought all the flour I could and concentrates and things like that to just try it all, man, and enjoy it. Right. I think that's only maybe in aging a little bit more and maturing, you get some of that wisdom or a few more reasons maybe to experiment with moderation and not going so crazy off the entertainment side of the cannabis industry, as fun as that actually is.
It's a very valid perspective you bring up, kind of the different demographics of consumers and who's being sort of marketed to at the different places. And when I was just hanging out in Spain a couple weeks ago, it was went to these kind of what they call like social clubs, and they're like,
Yeah, that was in Barcelona that Emerald or that Spannibis took place.
yep, it was right in Barcelona, kind of right outside it, one of the fairgrounds there, and it's an interesting setup in Spain because marijuana is illegal to sell or use in commerce. It's decriminalized for like personal at-home cultivation, but then they have these social clubs where you can kind of go in basically and smoke weed. I mean, you become a member. You don't really buy weed from them, but the clubs themselves have to like grow their own flower or make their own products for the members and different things like that. And so I think it makes it a little bit more. It's an interesting experience to go in, and you're kind of smoking in a more social fashion, looking at art, listening to music, talking to different people in different languages that are there versus like
That's
because I
got to be cool,
remember,
man.
yeah, I
I'm
remember coming to
picturing this
Vegas.
like Star Wars cantina scene, but like a little more Spanish looking.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. There's like over 200 of them, but probably like maybe the top 2 dozen are worth going to. And so each of them
Hmm.
has their own vibe. Like you said, there's this one I really like called Choco, which has the same vibe that you're talking about right there. It's so chill. It's so cool. Like the bud tenders were giving me like psychedelic guitarist rock on SoundCloud to like listen to and check out, which I
Nice.
never had seen before. And then there's other places you can go to if you want a more like if you want like a more larger vibe. There's other places that are called like one's called HQ, which is like a bigger one where they had some after parties from Spannibis at, and then there's other ones that are just more kind of intimate and local. They have different ranges of that, because like I remember coming to Vegas when I was young too. This is back weed wasn't legal and stuff like that, but you could drink. I mean, you could drink your face off, and but it's like, where were you going to go? I mean, it's always kind of like trying to find a bar or trying to find a club or something like that. And so, maybe having
Right.
more like these smoke lounges and stuff like that would be a nice thing to see around. So I think Vegas has like one, but other
Yeah,
places.
it had similar vibes to that, or at least that's the intent. But consumption lounges have been like three steps to the side, one step backwards the last year. It's been a little bit of a mess in the US with each state trying to figure out consumption lounges, different folks trying to really assess the business models. Like, can consumption lounges be profitable, or are they more community centers or, places to gather, like you mentioned with art and music. I think that it's waiting on the laws because of the compliance side in the US. It's difficult to, at least above board, provide that experience and anything else. Like to have a concert and, and a consumption lounge, I think is the ultimate goal, or to be able to like invite people in to an art gallery that doubles as a consumption lounge. I feel almost all of the business models would need like something else, like that other pillar outside of just selling, cannabis. But I will totally agree that, traveling to new cities, it can be hard sometimes to find I just went to a dispensary. Where do I, smoke this now?
Right. And it kind of brings in yeah, totally. Like we were saying about the underground market, and in some places how it's almost thriving stronger, like the seshes in California, and then also kind of a step up from there, these bodegas that are just like stores that set up, and once they eventually get found out, they just move.
Right. Whoever was
Overnight.
running it is gone, and that store's somewhere else.
All right.
Yeah.
And they don't go far. They'll just go like right to the next city that's, they have a different police station, and then they're just not on the radar, and they just set right back up. And I think I visited one of those in like San Pedro, LA, that was just kind of this almost looked like it was a laundromat that were converting or something like that, or it was like another area that was off to the side of one of these places that just didn't.
There are a lot like that, and I've been to one in LA. At least it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it was when they were still cracking down on some licenses. Many folks were trying to run shops that were just not licensed, and just doing the same thing. And I went there, and it was in somebody's house, and they had a glass case like that you would see in the shop. Small one, but setting in the kitchen in front of the counter, and a guy leaning against the stove with the cash register behind him, just weighing it out deli style. I went there with a friend, and we got out of it. We left the dispensary in quotes, and I was like, this was definitely not a licensed experience. Yeah. You could tell because the Ziploc baggie we left with as well.
He had a straight up like moonshiners vibe to it, sounds like. And
yeah, they had even almost a consumption lounge. They were like, "You're welcome to hang out here." And they like poked our head in this room, kind of dark, and had like a rundown couch in the corner. It's like, we probably won't hang out here, but thank you.
There's places like that, I'm sure, that are now, popped up. In every place that's got new regulations for legalization, I'm sure there's kind of some different events and things like that go on.
Oh, yeah. The underbelly is still going strong if you find it.
Yeah, it's an underground scene. People always have renegade parties, house parties. I used to DJ and stuff like that and be involved with like
some warehouse events.
Scene. Yeah, and it was always so I mean, it's always kind of two things at once, like you mentioned. The lounge would almost have to have another business facet to it to kind of, but it would have to be mobile that could go through, like people bringing paintings and stuff in. But it's still a little bit of a hard sell. I mean, even at this place in Spain, it's like it was a great spot, but I mean, who's going to spend like maybe $2,000 on a painting right there to have it shipped back? Maybe some people that are local, maybe some real rich people. I mean, they have some really big murals there.
So it was hard to see that someone would actually go to that gallery to purchase art rather than just to consume and observe or experience the art.
Right. I mean, and that was, part of their, they have like events and stuff like that. Part of, I think, their thing getting ready for Spannibis was to have a little bit more of the creme de la creme stuff. But you make a good point about having kind of a dual nature to these businesses and things like that. Because on the flip side, right, if you were to have like, let's say just a gallery opening, and then you had people that were there smoking weed or drinking and things like that, you'd have to go through the appropriate channels to get all your liquor licenses, or have rented out a venue that would already have a liquor license. and then it would all be copacetic, versus maybe if you had one of these lounges or something like that, it could be rented out. It
Yeah,
could be
consumption venue rather, or
consumption venue people could use for different things. Like I was talking with the owner of Choco about like uh like a smoke and paint, if you've ever seen those.
yeah,
Those
that
are kind
definitely
of
sounds like a
getting
good
popular.
combination to get down into something creative and chill for a while.
He was like, I don't know, a lot of paint and a lot of people around here, it could be kind of messy and things like that. It's like, yeah, well, you got to have like stuff on the floor to like catch the paint and things. But yeah, there's like these other mobile events I've seen that are they're kind of popping up as like hybrid smoke, and it's kind of like smoke and paint. It's kind of like sipping and painting. And I
Yeah,
guess they
right.
probably do them at I'm not sure where they do them at, but maybe, places like we're talking about, lounges.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see how that landscape really changes and how the industry itself reacts. Because I imagine if you could purchase and consume from a consumption lounge that had it doubled as something else, that would probably impact dispensary sales pretty seriously. That maybe some dispensaries would start to switch into those kinds of models long term. But yeah, the jury's out, man. We're gonna find out soon.
We'll have to, yeah, theorize on which way it'll kind of go and different things. And there's always, players with deep pockets and things like that, as different levels of legalization and standardization of some of these medicines come through on the federal arena, bigger pharmaceutical players and things like that, will always try and come in and
Pockets are getting deeper, huh?
probably have something to say about different things in there, because there's a lot of big money now that's come into the dispense. I use the dispensary world as kind of a loose term, but I mean when you're trading stocks that are of a weed stocks, nature on E-Trade, it's kind of a different world than probably when we grew up and things. I mean, I would have imagined the things would have happened, but we always think maybe it'll happen a little bit slower with
Oh yeah,
bureaucracy. So within
I
our
wouldn't have
lifetime,
thought we'd have this conversation now. After having to make like parking lot deals and go to strange houses for a while and just all kinds of unsavory things growing up to consume, versus now it's like, oh, people make a living off of this. It's a legit industry. It's awesome, man. I'm thankful for that. At least witnessing that piece of history and kind of change in the cultural zeitgeist.
that's really a rare point in time and thing that you bring up. You've got like the OGs and a lot of the people that were kind of influencing the debut and the inauguration of everything. Like I met this gentleman who was the creator of the Granddaddy Perp strain. He was at this event called the Squash Offs, and it was just kind of an interesting lineage. He was there with his two sons. They were going to compete with the strain and things like that, and then
Ken
the next
Estes.
generations. Yeah, it'll be in the next one or two generations. A lot of this stuff that we're talking about now, that's so much at the forefront, like all the legalization that's cascading down right now, will be kind of behind us. So it's a really rare and unique thing to be able to kind of report on and chat about some of these newer locations and things like that are like Missouri
Definitely.
just legalized, and a few other places, or just Kentucky, I think, was just
Right.
did that.
And many states are watching. Kansas voted theirs down again. And shout out to Granddaddy Perp. Thank you, Ken Estes, for the beauty of that cultivar. There are so many strains that cross or have a lineage that ties into GDP. It's everywhere.
It was really epic. Yeah, he was there kind of chatting with me. I chatted with his two sons that were bringing their stuff basically all the way there to enter it into this competition and things like that, and
Wow.
just being like a veteran of a time that's like, it'll be a time that'll be easily forgotten. In the next 50 years, that'll be kind of projection is that when we look back at some of this legalization and what it like really took for some of the first people to make it all happen, and some of the debts that they had to pay to society and to their families and stuff like that, years lost maybe to the legal system, or just fighting different things along the way. I think it'll be something to kind of hold up in a legacy fashion.
Yeah, it's going to be, it will feel like that, like a cultural time, or like folks who witnessed, like some of the high points in the 70s or the 60s. I think that there will be that vibe, that legacy era experience that has a lasting impact for, the generation that witnessed that. I mean, in modern kids and folks, coming up in the industry now, it's just unreal to imagine you could choose different cultivars, like when you had to just call your guy. But what you were mentioned about, folks that had to pay a cost or a societal tax on the cannabis progress, especially this Luke Scarmazzo in California. He served a 14-year prison sentence for running an above the board legal dispensary in about 2006, 2007, I think. It was during that era where everyone was very unsure if the feds were going to crack down on state-run cannabis licenses. And they did on a few of them, unfortunately. And he was in for a long time for doing something that now folks are, jumping at the opportunity to do. All these states are spinning up the same businesses. And luckily he was released here in February without having to spend the remainder of his sentence. But I mean, those are years that are not coming back, and it's a hell of a sacrifice to pay. So I think that there are a lot of those legacy cats that deserve the support kind of constantly from the industry, and deserve the respect there, from consumers, even if there isn't a connection, just to know that there were sacrifices made along the way, right?
Absolutely. It can't be understated. And I think that's a lot of the ethos that has to be taken into account when we have the discussion about commodification and some of the, big players with money that are trying to step in. And then we have to kind of honor the legacy of these people's lives and what it really took to be there. And just seeing, this last month going to a few of these couple conferences was sort of my first time really being exposed to some of the more serious ones. I've heard about MJ BizCon. I missed it this year, but hopefully next year. And I've heard it's just kind of a hectic thing, and just going to these conferences.
It'll be back.
I mean, these
November.
These individuals. Yeah, November. That'll be a good time. It's kind of just it's impressive to see how so many folks are putting like their entire lives now like into the industry. It's everything they have. It's everything that they do, and then
making a career out of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a passion. It's something that they are trying to do, even if they could maybe make more money elsewhere and things like that. And so it was really inspiring to see some of the folks like Granddaddy Perp, and then I was out there with the Queen of Hash, Mila. She was judging at the squash off, and just kind of seeing like, it's like Sir Isaac Newton says that he was able to see further because he stood on the shoulders of giants. And I feel like that's something that's got to be a story told within kind of the cannabis industry as we turn the page on some of the legacies out there, as they move on to the next chapters.
Definitely, man. I think that was a very poignant way to wrap up the conversation too. I want to thank you for coming on the show today and sharing some of your wisdom and insight here. I think there's so much more that we could discuss, so we might have to look at a future episode as well. And in the meantime, where can our listeners find out more about you or connect with you and your projects?
Oh, thanks so much again, man. All my stuff's out on just www.etherarcade.com, and anybody's welcome to just chat with me on LinkedIn. I'm always open to any veterans and things like that. And it means a lot being on the show, Rob, and being able to chat with you and talking with somebody of another high level of intelligence as a ganjier, and got to push the ideas forward, and I think education's pretty paramount in that. So I just really want to express my gratitude and say thanks for, allowing me the chance to share some insight today. And yeah, hope to chat some more. Hope to keep the discussions going, man.
Thank you for listening to the Apartment 113 podcast. For more information about the show and our range of services, visit apt113.com. We offer cannabis operations consulting, agile product management, and connoisseurship services. With over a decade of experience in the cannabis industry, Apartment 113 is here to help.